A pleasant good afternoon to my parliamentary colleagues, as well as the members of media who are present, and of course to you joining us on social media platforms, across all platforms in Trinidad and Tobago and beyond. Welcome to the Leader of the Opposition's weekly press conference. We are joined today by the Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Penelope Beckles, along with the Leader of Government Business in the Senate, Dr. Amory Brown, and the Member of Parliament for the Martin North East, Mr. Colm Imbert. We will be addressing serious issues in the public domain, and I will ask that the Leader of the Opposition join us and speak first. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, everyone. I'm really going to deal with 2 or 3 matters, but the first matter really has to do with the issue of Minister Roberts' discussion as it relates to the Victoria Keys apartments obtained by the family of Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves. A number of the newspapers have already discussed this at length, so I don't propose to go in because I've seen a number of articles today. But there are just some important issues that I would like to raise. In the post, I think it was 2 days ago, from Minister Roberts, he indicated that the family of Prime Minister Gonsalves has obtained a great benefit from these apartments at Victoria Keys. In his post, he indicates that there are some 214,000 people waiting for houses. And he specifically stated that, and if I can read, this is from the Express. He accused Gonsalves of being disrespectful to Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar for calling her misguided and her policy with respect to the U.S. military operations in the Caribbean Sea. Roberts said Gonsalves was beholden and sounded like a PNM because the Gonsalves family had received great benefits from the PNM. Now, this discussion is taking place at a time when there is elections in St. Vincent. And the question arises as to why now. Because when you look at the article, again, Roberts Victoria Keys purchased for police scrutiny. And you go through the article, he talks about the police investigating the matter, and whether or not these apartments were declared to the Integrity Commission in St. Vincent. It's important to note that when you look at the history of these particular Victoria Keys, which really goes way back to 2002, when the PNM initially constructed apartments there. And in 2010, when this government assumed office, the scope of works and the apartments were reconfigured. So you had 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. The first cost was a little over 200 million, and then works 400 million by the then UNC government. When we took office in 2015, over $600 million would have been spent on those Victoria Keys apartments. It is true to say that almost all the houses distributed by governments are subsidized. But when we looked at the Victoria Keys, after we calculated the $600 million, Dr. Rowley, at the time Prime Minister, his cabinet took the decision for those houses to go on the open market. So the impression that is being created when you juxtapose 214,000 people waiting for houses, and here it is, 3 members of one family received houses. the clear impression is that they are saying that the People's National Movement would have denied persons houses by virtue of the members of the family of the Prime Minister receiving those 3 houses. Now, there are still houses available at Victoria Keys as I speak. I think it's more than 50 plus. And simply because the average person cannot afford those houses. So the cost is between $1.4 million to $4 million. And the decision was taken to put it on the open market. And there are actually 2 real estate agents, as far as I know, who are responsible for selling those apartments. As a matter of fact, you can go on Google, you would have seen that they are available for sale. So it's very unfortunate and reckless of the minister to use his position as a minister to obtain information about those persons who would have purchased those houses and to bring it in the public domain and to say you're getting a benefit. You sound like a PNM. To say 214,000 people are still waiting, but yet still you can get houses when several people cannot get houses, knowing fully well that if anyone wanted to purchase those houses and they were capable of purchasing them, that is available. And also to speak about the fact, of course, that they didn't qualify, and in the public domain, and in the event that it is not known, the wife of the Prime Minister is a Trinidadian. So that he's also raising the issue and the criteria of qualifying for those houses. And I took note of the fact that the Honorable Prime Minister is supporting Minister Roberts in the statements that he has made. Section 28 of the Integrity in Public Act states that matters of a confidential nature in the possession of persons to whom this part applies shall be kept confidential unless the performance of duty or the needs of justice strictly require otherwise, and shall remain confidential even after separation from service. So it is an offense when you, particularly as a minister in a particular ministry, where you obtain confidential information, to bring that to the public domain for the purposes of doing exactly what Mr. Roberts has done. So it's important for the public to know that with the elections taking place in November to the end of this month, and the fact that it is very clear that when he says that Prime Minister Gonzalez is being disrespectful to his Prime Minister, during a period when there are issues relating to CARICOM and what is the position of Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to CARICOM being a zone of peace, and the Prime Minister earlier saying, you talk for yourself, I'm talking for myself. So clearly, we cannot separate this issue from what is going on right now in the CARICOM region as it relates to Venezuela, as it relates to the positions being taken by other prime ministers and to our own position. So we await any further information, but it is very unfortunate that Minister Roberts has decided, as a minister, where he, in a ministry where he now has access to confidential information, to use that information and try to persuade the public that the People's National Movement did some kind of illegal and underhand act in Prime Minister Gonzalez's family purchasing apartments that is available on the open market for persons to purchase. So the 214,000 persons of which he refers, members of the public need to know that you can still purchase those apartments. Not only that, I want to repeat that when this project was initially conceived by Dr. Rowley at the time, it would have been for the ordinary persons to purchase with a qualification that was stipulated. Because the People's National Movement policy introduced in 2002 had three pillars: affordability, accessibility, and improvement to the quality of life for the low to middle income earners. And at that time, that is how that Victoria Keys project was conceived. The UNC comes into office and converts those said apartments that eventually the cost would not be affordable to the average person.
The UNC did that.
But now they're trying to play smart with foolishness by saying to the public, he sounds PNM, he's getting a benefit from the PNM, and the entire sale of those apartments is something that should be looked at suspiciously. The other matter that I wish to raise has to do with the issue of the Brian Lara Stadium and the issue of noise pollution as raised by the Honorable Prime Minister. And let me make it abundantly clear that I don't think there's a Trinidadian or a Tobagonian that is not concerned with noise pollution. I mean, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Carnival or Brian Lara. I mean, I am sure if I took a poll here, there are persons who may be living on streets with bars and other activities, but you have to deal with this. And noise pollution is something not just for discussion, not just a matter here, but in almost every part of the world. Some countries has dealt with it differently. Some of you would be aware that even in Britain, where at a certain point in time, as it relates to when planes land, the government has taken a decision in the interest of the public that after a particular time, airports have to close. So the real issue for me is why Brian Lara? Because the issue of noise pollution is not exclusive to Brian Lara. There are several promoters that would have already made their down payments for FETs to take place in January. And the impression is given in the public domain that the facility itself or the area where cricket is played, that area is somehow used and destroyed. So we know that the area uses the car park. And we also know that if you look at the contract document for anyone who utilizes Brian Lara Stadium, the contract document is very specific as it relates to restoring the facility to basically how it was met when you initially got the facility. Not only that, so there is a fee that you would have to pay, and if you do not meet those requirements, then they withhold that fee. So my point is, why Brian Lara? And also, if I recall specifically the document from UDCOT, it is now not only going to be Brian Lara, but it is also going to be other facilities for which UDCOT has responsibilities. So we have to assume that the Hyatt, Invaders Bay, any other facility that is managed by UDCOT will no longer have any FETs. Now, you may or may not recall that earlier this year, the Honorable Minister of Culture, Michelle Benjamin, had a meeting with the promoters in terms of the way forward.
Economic effect on the country.
No such issue was raised. Now, we all understand that when we talk about carnival, that it's a debate that comes up. I mean, I would tell you, as Minister of the Environment, there was a new app developed for the Woodbrook community to be able to test noise. Because, you know, you want to move to the stage of being scientific, and the police were there. And it's something that we wanted to, as you use that project and you collect the evidence, how do you share that kind of information with other communities? Every single one of us here, whether it be the Honorable Brian Manning from San Fernando East, Hans from Diego Martin West, Simon from Diego Martin Central, at some point in time, your constituents come to you continuously. As a matter of fact, there are situations where people have left communities because of the issue of noise. So I am not saying that it's not an important issue, but I'm saying, why Brian Lara 1 and 2? Why no consultation? Because these are facilities that are owned by the state, basically owned by the public. And if you, yes, you feel strongly about it, why would the Honorable Prime Minister say that she will not have a meeting with the promoters when the question was asked? I just want to be clear. I just want to make sure that I repeat exactly. There will be no meeting between myself and the TTPA. The decision stands and will not be reversed.
And they used to call
that is democracy for you. That as a prime minister, you're not even willing to have consultations, even if you feel very strong about a particular position, because this is not the personal property of the prime minister. Brian Lara is not the personal property of the prime minister. But it may very well be that there may be plans for the Brian Lara Stadium. And we will wait very patiently as to whether or not there is somebody that has an interest in the Brian Lara Stadium. And we will wait very much in short order to see whether that is in truth and in fact the case.
So they're trying to sell this.
Because if you take a decision and you feel so strong about it, what is the alternative? As a government, you want to let people know, well, listen, we have had complaints. I mean, it's not only there. Because the next thing you know, there might be Skinner Park semi-finals. That might be an issue. Queen's Park, Savannah. So let us see. Now I want to refer to you to page 53 of the budget presentation, where the Minister of Finance says that they will establish a state-sponsored real estate investment trust, a landmark initiative to democratize state-owned assets, strengthen and diversify our capital market, and broaden public participation in national wealth creation. This is another bold step to unlock new avenues of non-debt financing. Through this vehicle, high-value income-generating properties such as land, office buildings, and commercial infrastructure will be transferred into a professionally managed, state-sponsored real estate investment trust. Shares will be listed on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. So let us see whether or not this is one of the projects that is going to fall under this, and whether we will soon see some organization, institution, business coming from abroad with an interest in cricket or an interest in something else for which the government has already discussed. Let us wait and see. But the truth is that a lot of these activities and these commentaries are all about distractions. Sunday, and I don't have my Express. Live Sport was on the front page.
Live Sport.
Mr. Roberts has had a lot of commentaries, but he has not responded to anything that has been said as it relates to live sport. So the blueprint and everything else that is coming up, even all of these projects, because we are not even a month away from the conclusion of the debate of the budget. And you would think that all these great ideas that they are coming up with now
would have been included.
It is fascinating
Very good, Penny.
that
Very
you
good.
would never have thought about it before the budget. Because if you are talking about, I mean, you know, you have all these different, you have the midterm review, you have the PSIP. I mean, you have all seen it because you all have all covered. Multiplicity of documents going through every single project. Not one of the projects that they are now mentioning you would find either in their manifesto
Or in the budget.
or you would find it in any of the midterm review of any of the documents.
Very good, Penny.
So those are my 2 items. I may have something else to say later on. Thank you very much.
Excellent speech by Penny Beckles.
Thank you very much, Opposition Leader. We invite the Honorable Dr. Amory Brown to the podium now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremonies, parliamentary colleague, the Honorable Simon de Nobrega. Recognize the leader of the opposition present here today, as well as many other members, a very strong showing of the Opposition People's National Movement, the party which loves Trinidad and Tobago and will always be patriotic to this country, whether in or out of office. As you know, today is a very important day for our national football team, and we join with the rest of this country in support and wishing the very best for Trinidad and Tobago on and off of the field of play. As we do this, we recognize that this nation is in crisis. And we have a government that is spiraling rapidly. Very few would have predicted that just 6 months into their term, 10% of their parliamentary term has elapsed. There would be crises across so many sectors in this country. Leading the way, unfortunately, is the foreign policy sector of Trinidad and Tobago, which many stakeholders have recognized is in complete meltdown in this nation. We've seen attacks from this government against Caracas, concerted, particularly rhetorical attacks, culminating in a threat of nuclear warfare at one point from one government minister. So it's attacks against Caracas, it's attacks against CARICOM. We just got a fresh example as illuminated by the leader of the opposition a short while ago. And now we're seeing the hand of an attack against CARICOM. And that's something we will be talking more with you about in the future, where our creative economy is under attack and the ability of ordinary poor people to earn a living, earn a dollar, even within particular seasons like Independence and Carnival, is under attack. And that's a form of economic discrimination.
Rolling out policies to attack the
So
small man.
I want to talk a little bit about the attacks on CARICOM and the way in which this government seems to view multilateral fora. We got an example on the 6th of July, 2025, when this government would have had to make a decision as a fairly newly elected team as to how it would be represented at the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in Jamaica. That was the first opportunity to demonstrate regard or lack of regard for the Caribbean community. I think everyone, I confess myself, everyone was shocked at the decision of the Prime Minister, which she has never explained to this day, to not represent this country, which is a founding member of the Caribbean community, at that summit. Instead, she sent two cabinet ministers. One was Minister Sobers, and the other was Minister, which Alexander was it? One of the Alexander twins, the Minister of Homeland Security, who really should not be representing anything or anyone in or out of Trinidad and Tobago. So there was that decision, which was remarked upon by many stakeholders. Then in the first week of September, there was the long-awaited Africa CARICOM Summit in Addis Ababa. And having shown her hand in July, many of us were anxiously awaiting the level of representation. These are summits. These are not ministerial meetings. So at a summit, you anticipate and expect and invite the head of government. If he or she is unable to attend for a rational reason, you would anticipate a senior member of the cabinet to represent. Who did Trinidad and Tobago send to the Africa CARICOM Summit in September? It was not the Prime Minister. It was not the Minister of Foreign Affairs. It was not another cabinet minister. It was not even a permanent secretary to a summit. The delegation was headed by a divisional manager from within the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. That's September. Fast track now to November, the first week of November, when delegations are being mobilized to the EU CARICOM Summit in Colombia. And we recognize the delegation of Trinidad and Tobago is headed not by the head of government, the Prime Minister, not by the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, but by a parliamentary secretary. So you have all of these opportunities, and Trinidad and Tobago sending a clear signal of disregard for these multilateral fora. So the parliamentary secretary attended and from all accounts participated in the summit. But all of these summits culminate in a declaration, a closing statement, in some cases, a resolution. With respect to the CELAC EU summit, there was a joint declaration, the Declaration of Santa Marta, which was agreed upon on the 9th of November, 2025. So I would want to, so of course we would have studied this declaration. And to the horror of those who are paying attention, Trinidad and Tobago, there's a footnote to the declaration. Trinidad and Tobago, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, this is on the last page in black and white, disassociates from paragraph 10 of the joint declaration. Now, what would lead Trinidad and Tobago to disassociate from the declaration of a summit? Let's see what this paragraph 10 says. But it begins in an interesting fashion. Noting that CELAC has declared itself a zone of peace. And immediately that's a red flag to the government, the UNC government of Trinidad and Tobago, because there's something about the zone of peace, notwithstanding Kamla Persad Bissessa having signed off on the zone of peace in her first iteration as Prime Minister. There's something about that phrase that this government seems to find particularly offensive. They are not even able to keep their silence at meetings when this concept arises. Noting that CELAC has declared itself as a zone of peace, committed to the settlement of disputes through dialogue and cooperation in accordance with international law. I want you to pay particular attention to the phrasings within paragraph 10, because in a 52 paragraph declaration, This is what our country takes issue with and disassociates itself from. Committed to the settlement of disputes through dialogue and cooperation in accordance with international law. Our government has a problem with that. We recognize the ongoing efforts to achieve peace in the region. Our government has a problem with that, highlighting our support for the peace process in Colombia with the backing of international community and the UN. We discussed the importance of maritime security. Our government has a problem with that, and regional stability in the Caribbean. I want you to look out for any language that you as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago might find offensive in this declaration. We agreed upon the importance of international cooperation, mutual respect, and full compliance with international law. So twice in paragraph 10, international law is highlighted as a foundational concept for the EU and for CELAC, but not for the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago as represented at this particular summit. Full compliance with international law, including in combating transnational organized crime and drug trafficking. This was not Ralph Gonsalves or Mia Motley sitting in a room and coming up with language. This is the European Union. This summit was co-chaired by the President of the European Union as well as the President of Colombia, reviewing the international situation and coming up with a joint declaration that is designed to represent the ideals of all countries that are present. Trinidad and Tobago approves 51 of 52 paragraphs and disassociates itself from this one. And the last line of paragraph 10, we reiterate, and this probably would be offensive to our Prime Minister, we reiterate our commitment to strengthening mechanisms for dialogue, cooperation, and technical assistance to jointly address these challenges. You see, the only problem I could see with paragraph 10 is it does not fit into the narrative that the largest military and naval mobilization in the history of the Southern Caribbean is somehow targeting drug running pirogues in the Caribbean Sea. That does not jive or square with paragraph 10 at all. But that is the agenda that Kamala Persad-Bissessar and this government is trying to impose on CARICOM and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I also want to join with the leader of the opposition in completely condemning the repugnant attacks launched by Minister Anil Roberts and now the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar, against a sitting head of government of the Caribbean community, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and his wife and his children, named and individually within those repugnant political attacks. That is normally a no-fly zone, even within the domestic politics. So to take those types of repugnant attacks against family members of public officials into the regional environment is something that we should all deplore very strongly. And the connection, as highlighted by the leader of the opposition, that Roberts made between these attacks and the recent comments by Prime Minister Gonsalves that he does not agree with our Prime Minister's misconception of the zone of peace requires further attention. Because if his theory is that the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines is disagreeing with the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago because of some benefit received years ago, that does not explain the reality that every other head of government within CARICOM also disagrees with our Prime Minister. Every other CARICOM member state associated with itself and approved paragraph 10 in this joint declaration. They were all represented. We are the only CARICOM member state, isolated, that made such a disassociation. And I would ask the question, therefore, what are the incentives or benefits, by that bizarre logic, associated with the position of Mia Motley, who supports a zone of peace and does not agree with the position of Trinidad and Tobago, Irfan Ali, Roosevelt Skerritt, Andrew Holness, and every other head of government of the Caribbean community. So that requires some further explanation. And I just want to end on this condemnation of that attack by the government of Trinidad and Tobago by agreeing with the leader of the opposition that this is an obvious attempt to distract from the $440 million life sport scandal that continues to stain the politics of Trinidad and Tobago, not just in the quantum of money that was defrauded from the taxpayers of this country, but where that money went to murderers, to drug traffickers, to fraudsters, and other criminals. And this country and society is still paying the price for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emery. Moving on to Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Northeast, Colin Burt now, who will be coming to speak on matters of a financial issue. Too heavy to move.
Good afternoon, everyone. You will have to excuse me. I'm right-handed, so I wanted to. No, it's okay. All right. Well, if you think you can, I deeply appreciate that, but I don't. Sure. Afternoon, colleagues, Leader of the Opposition, my parliamentary colleagues, members of the media. A couple of days ago, the sitting government launched something that they called the Revitalization Blueprint for Trinidad and Tobago. And made a big presentation about this blueprint. And I have summarized the various core projects that were announced in that revitalization blueprint as follows. In San Fernando, a waterfront hotel, a convention center, Plaza San Carlos would be a cultural hub. There will be a health city south and waterfront residences. In Port of Spain, in Invaders Bay, there would be 5-star hotels, a marina, waterfront apartments, something that they call an infinity financial tower. I believe that's the thing with the Scalextric tracks around it. Dr. Brown. And a convention center. In addition, a port city, an offshore industrial and logistics zone, a Sea Lots Industrial Park, free trade zone, East Port of Spain redevelopment, a health city in Port of Spain too, and renewal of the Queen's Park Savannah. Another key project was the San Fernando to Mayaro Highway, Port of Galeota expansion, Mount Hope National Security Complex, Tamana Prison Campus, Isla La Carrera Luxury Resort, Golden Grove Commons, I'm not sure exactly what that is, and Central Government Campus in Chaguanas, a Southwest Border Security Hub in Cedras, and a Chaguaramas Border Security upgrade. After that, there was a lot of back and forth as to whether the UNC had simply plagiarized the PNM's plans. A lot of argument. But what struck me in particular from Minister John, who more or less announced his projects, was an allegation, false, that PNM had no vision for Trinidad and Tobago, was only thinking about things in Port of Spain, and had no interest in any other part of the country.
I love
and that it was not a cut and paste, it was not a copy, etc., etc., etc. So what I did when I heard that, having been in government between 2001 and 2010, and 2015 and 2025, and those periods are significant, because in the 2001 to 2010 period,
there was no money, Caribbean,
Vision
so just like
2020
there's no money right now.
was launched and operationalized. And if I can give you some background on Vision 2020, Vision 2020 was first announced in 2002. And in 2002, it started off with a, let's call it a soft launch, where the concept of Vision 2020 was announced, and then a number of committees were appointed using leading citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, including a notable person, Botewari, was one of those people.
Good evening,
There were
Caribbean Soul.
various
Good
sectoral
evening,
groups
Sadiqa.
headed by a distinguished person. Mr. Lockjack was head of another sectoral committee. And these sectoral committees underwent a series of public consultations to put flesh on the bones of the concept that was Vision 2020, culminating in the formal launch of Vision 2020 in 2006. Now, Vision 2020 was not simply a set of pretty buildings, which is how I will describe this redevelopment or revitalization blueprint, apologies. It wasn't just a collection of, fancy buildings. It was much more than that. Vision 2020 had 5 pillars: developing innovative people, nurturing a caring society, enabling competitive business, investing in sound infrastructure and environment, and promoting effective government. And for those members of the media who are unable to find the link to find Vision 2020 and Vision 2030, I tried to download Vision 2030 today, I'll come to that in a little while, and discovered that the link at the Ministry of Planning has been disabled by the current administration. So if you go on to the Ministry of Planning, I think they have a new name for it, Economic Affairs or something, and you go and you press on the link that says Vision 2030, you get error 404 For those of us who use the internet, we know what error 404 means. It means it's gone.
Page not
So the
found.
link has been disabled. So if you are doing a simple search to find out what exactly was Vision 2030, or 2020 for that matter, they disappeared. They've disappeared from the government's websites, the new government. But be that as it may, so Vision 2020, which as I said had these 5 pillars, it wasn't just pretty buildings, was launched in 2006, and then there was a monitoring process. If you go on the Ministry of Finance website, it seems they didn't see this one. So that link is still working. You will find the Vision 2020. It's essentially a report, a progress report. You'll find it on the Ministry of Finance website, and what you will find is the operational plan and progress report for the period 2007, 2010 on the Ministry of Finance website. I suggest you go fast because I think we're live. So by the time this press conference is over, that might be gone too, right? But I downloaded it. So if any member of the media needs it, I will send it for you, okay? And
Very
in
good
that
call.
operational plan, the government gave a progress report on how we were doing in terms of
How is
meeting
the
all
screen
of these
quality? I'm getting
developmental
errors
goals. Because
over here.
Vision 2020 dealt with transforming the public service, dealt with transforming our ICT infrastructure. And in that period, you will recall that oil was, I think it reached $140 at one point in time over that period, around 2007, 2008. And natural gas, I remember, hit $13 per MMBTU in that period. I mean, money was flowing. I remember one year we had a budget surplus. I think it was 2007 or 2008 of about $7 billion. I mean, those days long, long gone. So that when the commodity prices were extremely high and we were making a lot of money, there was a push to operationalize what had been conceptualized in 2006. As I said, it wasn't just pretty buildings. It was improving or transforming the public service, dealing with the way how the government cares for people, infrastructure, of course. And infrastructure had many arms: road infrastructure, office accommodation, community facilities, sporting infrastructure, all various types of infrastructure that you would see in the public sector investment program. And if you go into this document, the 2007-2010 document, fortunately, in its introduction and in its first several pages, it tells you exactly what Vision 2020 was all about, exactly what it was all about. And surprisingly, when you go into the document, it's a very long document, I think 286 pages long, you will see many of the pretty buildings that were announced in the revitalization blueprint. I was a little surprised at the wording because that word revitalization kind of struck a bell. So I went looking and I found that one of the PNM's projects or programs was revitalization of the city of Port of Spain. So if there was plagiarism, it isn't just plagiarism of the projects, it's plagiarism of the words too. So anyway, so you go into that Vision 2020 operational plan and progress report 2007, 2010, 286 pages. I don't have time to go through all 286 now. So as I said, it's there, and if the media needs it, I will send it to you. Fast forward now, so that's 2006. Fast forward now to 2016. In 2016, because we had gone out of office in 2010, some more reports stopped, operational plans stopped, progress stopped between 2010 and 2015 on the operationalization of Vision 2020. Perhaps the new government didn't agree with it. Perhaps it didn't agree with all the projects that were in the 2020 plan, such as the Invaders Bay development. And what I'm seeing in this revitalization blueprint is an Invaders Bay project, which has hotels, a marina, and luxury waterfront apartments. And I just say, let me go and do some
None of it will be
quick
started either.
search
So
on the internet. And I discovered that on January 28th or 27th of 2025, this year, when the PNM was still in government, UDCOT issued an expression of interest for the Invaders Bay project. It wasn't the first time, it was actually the second time that UDCOT did that. And the land project is divided into 13 parcels. Check the date, January 2025, with approvals for commercial, recreational, entertainment, hotel, conference and convention facilities, high-rise residential units, and a marina. Exactly the same as is in that part of the Port of Spain Innovation and Development Hub. And I've seen these photos before. UDCOT over many, many years, going all the way back to 2006, 2007, had developed very comprehensive, sophisticated plans for the development of Invaders Bay, which included all of these things. High-rise apartments, convention center, marina, port, Kotila. So I said to myself, well, this is a kind of a repeat of what I've seen in government over the last 20 years or so. So I then said to myself, let me go and take a look and see what went on with UDCOT, because I noticed that it was UDCOT that was the sort of the architect of this revitalization plan.
Kind of technical,
And if you
kind of
go
put people
on
to sleep now.
UDCOT's website right now, you're going to see a very large number of projects. I am actually doing it in front of you right now. I am going to search UDCOT. Okay, I'm on the UDCOT website. And I am going to UDCOT projects. Okay, up pops the revitalization hub, of course. And then let me go to projects. And I see this. The central block in the Port of Spain General Hospital, well, you could see that out of this window. The Ministry of Health Administrative Building, you see that driving around the savannah. The Roxborough Hospital, well, if you go to Bago, to Roxborough, you'll see that. The Diego Martin Health Center, if you go down Diamond Vale, you'll see that. Sangre Grande Hospital Campus, Go Grande, you'll see that. Arima General Hospital, I've actually visited that hospital. Go to Arima, right there, in the middle of Arima. The Point Fortin Hospital, go down Point, you'll see that. The San Fernando Teaching Hospital, which was in effect an administrative complex for San Fernando, designed to bring all departments of government together in one location in San Fernando. That was the purpose of that particular building in San Fernando. It's something desperately needed in San Fernando, where you have a complex where if you need a government service, immigration, town and country planning, social development, some government service, the design of that building was to accommodate that desperately needed service, desperately needed by our citizens in San Fernando. Huge building. The new government came in and changed that into a teaching hospital. That was their prerogative. They win the election. This is in 2010. They took the administrative complex in San Fernando and changed it into a teaching hospital. So that San Fernando Teaching Hospital is really the PNM government's administrative building turned into a hospital. It was virtually complete in 2010. Then you have a number of other projects, small, large projects, all over the country. Mahaika Sports Complex, the Maruga Multipurpose Youth and Sport Facility, Morvan Community Swimming Pool, Lara Cricket Academy, the same one that is attracting attention at this point in time. The National Academy for Performing Arts South, the National Academy for Performing Arts North, and these are all completed projects. Now we have ongoing projects started under the last PNM administration, the Election and Boundaries Headquarters, that's right there in St. Clair, obliquely opposite Cape Hawk Hotel. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services Head Office, which is at the end of Victoria Avenue on corner of Tragreed Road. The Diego Martin Public Library, built by the PNM administration. It's on the Diego Martin Main Road, very close to Diamond Vale. Completed, delivered, operational, being heavily utilized. Not so, Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Central. Then you have the Piccadilly Street Urban Regeneration Project in progress. If you go in the back of by Piccadilly Street and you drive down to that little piece of road that takes you out by the Besson Street police station, you will see a steel structure going up. That is a PNM project that is continuing Piccadilly Street Urban Regeneration Project. You have the Assessment Center and Housing Facility for Socially Displaced Persons ongoing. You have the Sisters of St. Joseph of Cluny Convent Building Family Court, delivered by the PNM. You have the San Fernando Waterfront Parkade, delivered by the PNM in San Fernando. I'm saying all of this to put paid to the untruth that the PNM only had a plan for Port of Spain. You hear the areas I'm calling? Continuing. The Chaguanas Regional Corporation Complex, built by the People's National Movement, not by the UNC. Look where it is, Chaguanas. It is the largest local government regional complex in the country by far. In fact, it's the envy of every other regional corporation. The Sipari Administrative Complex, that's not in Port of Spain, delivered. The Ministry of Education Tower, the Government Plaza right over there. The International Waterfront Center over there. The San Fernando Waterfront Redevelopment Project. I don't have an hour to go through the San Fernando Redevelopment Project. But suffice it to say, what that is listed here in terms of the development of San Fernando, all of that is in the San Fernando Waterfront Redevelopment Project of the PNM. Let me move on now. The Moruga Agro Processing and Light Industrial Park, not Port of Spain. President's House, the complete renovation and rebuilding of President's House, done. The Carenage Fish Fry, the Carenage Fishing Center. So, again, I don't have 2 hours to go through all the projects that are on UDCOT's website right now. Let me move on to another one. I'm seeing here San Fernando to Mayaro Highway announces a brand new project in a rural area, which was never the focus of the PNM because we're only interested in Port of Spain. Let me tell you what the facts are with respect to that project. The San Fernando to Mayaro Highway was conceptualized by the People's National Movement. I was the Minister of Works at the time. In fact, we had a national highway grid, which I had the honor to develop as Minister of Works and Transport between 2005 and 2010. And the projects were highway from San Fernando to Mayaro, causeway from Mukurapa to Chaguaramas, desperately needed. So Solomon Hochai highway extension to Point Fortin, Wallerfield to Manzanilla, extension of the Churchill Roosevelt Highway, Uriah Butler Highway to Trin City. That was a west to east highway, so that if you're coming from south, before you get to the Caroni River, you could turn off and go straight to Piaco and Trin City. Then the north-south highway from Princestown to Curep. That was another one. From Curep, we were taking a highway straight down to Princestown through the middle of the country. That's not in Port of Spain. But let me go now to what went on with the San Fernando to Mayaro Highway. Conceptualized, designed, tender documents completed, tenders invited, and tenders received by the PNM before the 2010 election. That project is a complete PNM project. And yet, Ms. John says that that is not so. That is some brainwave that they came up with. We tendered 3 of these highways that I called. We tendered San Fernando to Miaro. We tendered Wallerfield to Manzanilla. And we tendered Solomon Hochoy San Fernando to Point Fortin, all three. But the tenders came in a month or two before the 2010 election. And I, as Minister of Works at the time, felt it was not appropriate to go ahead with projects of such magnitude on the eve of a general election. I so advised the then Prime Minister and Cabinet, and we decided to wait. So I am not hearing in this revitalization thing, because revitalization is far more than pretty buildings. What about public transportation? Go into Vision 2030. And Vision 2030 was an upgrade of 2020, because remember, we came out of government in 2010, came back in 2015. And we got to work, and we decided to look at what had happened to the Vision 2020 plan, and we upgraded it to Vision 2030. And that, as I said, was launched by the then Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, in 2016. And there's a very interesting line in that Vision 2030 document that I would refer members of the media to. It's a 156-page document, Vision 2030, and you could find it if you search hard. As I said, if you go on the planning website under the UNC, it's gone. And this is the line on page 100. This was a statement made in 2016. Trinidad and Tobago now faces more than ever an economic situation of limited financial resources to be allocated among various competing legitimate needs. It is therefore imperative that priorities be established. Not only do priorities facilitate resource allocation, they also play a critical role in helping us define exactly what we want to accomplish and the time frame in which they are to be completed. Very profound paragraph, because that is the difference between PNM and UNC. They have announced this revitalization blueprint. They haven't told you how much it will cost. They haven't told you how they're going to do it. They haven't told you where they're going to get the money from. They haven't told you the methodology, and they haven't told you priorities. Which one of all of these projects that I have just listed for you, all of these key projects that we took out of their blueprint, the San Fernando transformation, the Port of Spain development, the San Fernando to Miaro Highway, the Port of Galeota expansion, again, a PNM project that has been tendered out years ago, the Tamana campus prison, the luxury resort on Carrera, the Invaders Bay development. Which one of them is the government's priority? Which? They haven't told you. But in our process, we had prioritized things. And of course, remember, in 2016, we were facing a situation where the price of oil had dropped to $25. The price of oil in 2015 was $100. So we came in, and price of oil was dropping like a piece of lead. And while I was reading the budget, the price of oil was dropping on that day. And within 3 months, the price of oil had hit $25. The fiscal impact of that was a loss of $20 billion, not million, $20 billion, $20,000 million in annual government revenue in the year fiscal 2016. 20 billion gone. And so we were as a country. In 2014, government revenue was about 55 billion. In 2016, it was 35. And so we went as a country struggling, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, struggling to get the revenue back up. And it was creeping back up. And then we get a pandemic, a global pandemic, which knocked another $15 billion out of government revenue. And then, since then, the country has been recovering from the pandemic. So we as a government had to prioritize because the money simply wasn't there. But we still built a world-class hospital in Sangre Grande, a world-class hospital in Arima, a world-class hospital in Point Fortin. And the point I'm making about a
All right, get to the
Blueprint for our
point,
country is
Bob. I'm
not just
getting bored
pretty
now.
buildings. What about public transportation? The PNM bit the bullet. It wasn't easier, and bought 2 brand new state-of-the-art fast ferries, because we decided that transportation between Trinidad and Tobago was critical to Trinidad and Tobago, to the country, to the citizens. That cost $1 billion. That wasn't easy, you know. We had to go and borrow that money. So we did that. We went ahead with a number of large projects, let's call them mega projects. And the irony about this revitalization plan is that if you go and you go back to newspaper archives from January of 2010 to May of 2010, every week you're going to see the current prime minister, who was then leader of the opposition, opposing every single large project of the People's National Movement, every single one, saying that government should focus on basic needs and not build all these huge fancy buildings. Every week you will see that from January 2010 to May of 2010. So I thought it was necessary to come here today to say that the revitalization blueprint is a poor copy, a very poor copy of our Vision 2020 plan, our Vision 2030 plan, and our public sector investment programs from 2015 to 2025. You go there and check it for yourself. Go and read the PNM's 2015 and 2020 manifestos. You see all them projects inside of there, every one, and more. Except we didn't decide to make Tamina a prison. They seem to be fascinated with prisons. I mean, they're going to build a 500-acre prison.
Yep, told you all.
They seem to be fascinated with building prisons. That's all I would say. We didn't have one of that. We weren't planning to build.
Increase the amount of crime
There's
that
already a
black
maximum
people
security prison
start
up
with the kids.
in the Piaco area. We didn't know Makoya area. We didn't plan to build a prison complex in Tamina. They could take ownership of that one. But the point is, there's far more to developing a country than putting up buildings. There's no way they can do these projects. They don't have the resources. Things are very bad now. The price of oil is dropping. Oil production is down. Gas production is down. Costs have gone up. This same government is increasing the mandatory expenditure of the government. The 10% increase, for example, is going to add a couple $2 billion to mandatory government expenditure. So if they do that, the 10% increase, and add $2-3 billion to government annual expenditure, where do they get any money from all of this? This is just as the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, my colleague from the Senate, said, it is a distraction. And it is also dishonest for them to say that these are all their ideas, this is their vision, and the PNM had no vision for Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
Very good, Crom.
Thank you very much, MPM Birds. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going into questions. I would ask just by way of housekeeping. Of course, you raise your hand, identify yourself on your media host, and which one of our attendees today you would like to ask a question of. There's a microphone being passed around. I see Akash has it in hand already.
Media, my question would be for the opposition leader, please.
Opposition leader.
Good afternoon, ma'am. So we heard it yesterday from former Housing Minister Randall Mitchell, and again today about Minister Roberts on a possible breach of the Integrity in Public Life Act. Will you all be taking any action in terms of carrying anything to the Integrity Commission or anything further?
Charge
Well,
him.
so that we are going to discuss, when we have our caucus tomorrow. Yes.
One of the things the Prime Minister would have pointed to yesterday when she said that the HDC is conducting an investigation into the acquisition of one of the properties. I think it would be Prime Minister Gonzalez's daughter with the rent-own agreement. She showed a document saying that it was approved on the 30th of April 2025, after the general election, but before her government was sworn in.
Yes.
And she said that is under investigation. You all have any information about that, how that may have happened?
Well,
Or?
the only information that I have is that particular apartment had some challenges and they were taking quite a while to get it sorted out. So I think that was the reason for it being done that way. And that's not the only apartment that has problems, but I know that in terms of the agreement and the discussions to purchase it, it was before the 30th.
With respect to the Brand Lara Academy, now this is the second time we've been hearing something bit cryptic from you all about the Brand Lara Stadium. The former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley a couple months ago would have made some reference into disrespecting Brand Lara, and made some reference about the stadium. And when I asked him, well, he said, you'll find out one day. And you kind of also reference that a bit. Do you all have any information in terms of a plan that the government may have to do something with that facility?
Okay, well, you said something cryptic. My point is that I just oppose that to a particular policy that they have. Okay? So we would have to wait to see if in truth and in fact there's a policy, because my position is that if you decide that you are dealing with noise pollution, in other words, your reason that it's exclusively for cricket and you link that to noise pollution. So, I mean, obviously, noise pollution isn't exclusive to Brand Lara. That's my point.
But nothing about the facility itself and the future of the facility itself. Not about noise pollution or anything.
No, well, some time ago, we would have said that the cricket facility is not exclusively for cricket. In terms, UDCOT would have taken that position. That was maybe 2023 thereabouts. Yeah.
I'm seeing in the public domain now people questioning if Carnival 2026, I'm talking about the 2-day street festival, Carnival Monday and Tuesday, if that may be in jeopardy next year. They are comparing it to how the Independence Day parade was cancelled. Is that a concern for the PNM as well? That
Well, it must be a concern because you're seeing these, gradually, virtually. If you link that, of course, to the SOE, to the state of emergency, that has been extended. I think it's going to be just 2 weeks before Carnival. So you have the SOE, and yes, there must be a concern. Must be a concern.
What is that concern?
Well, the concern is that if you go back to what happened for independence, right? You talked about the link was that there was a security issue. In relation to ministers, in relation to conspiracies, in relation to targeting members of the judiciary. In truth and in fact, has that, if you extend the state of emergency, and at the same time you say crime is down, and you know that the state of emergency is going to end 2 weeks before Carnival, clearly there must be a concern.
And is that concern that they may, I don't want to say stop the 2-day festival, but is that your concern?
I wouldn't say stop, but obviously, think about what the promoters are saying at this time. Okay, because Brand Lara is the facility where you have quite a number of facts. So there was no consultation and you have stopped. So, and there's, you say absolutely no meeting, no alternative, no discussion. There must be a concern. Because we all know that for the average Trinidadian and Tobagonian, Carnival is an activity. It's revenue generating, even though I see some people start discussing and say that it's not one of the activities that earns revenue, but that is not so. As a matter of fact, the University of the West Indies has done studies about the economic benefits of Carnival to Trinidad and Tobago.
Just one more from me before I pass it on. We saw that the Tobago House of Assembly has been dissolved. Election date is imminent.
Yes.
Any thoughts about the PNM's chances? That's in the context of being soundly defeated in the last THA election and losing the 2 Tobago seats in the general election. What do you think that your party's chances are this time?
Well, I was in Tobago up to yesterday, myself and several other members of the leadership. We met with the deputy political leader, Tobago political leader of the PNM Tobago and members of the council. And we will do all that is necessary to give us the best possible chance for the People's National Movement to win the THA elections. We are not going to take the position that it is not possible. the truth is that every time an election takes place, you have to do the work, you have to do your analysis, you have to prepare. We understand that they have won the two seats. They now have the two seats and in control. I mean, there were times when the People's National Movement, it was 12-0. We were in control of the THA, and we also had 2 members of parliament. I mean, we have lost the recent general elections, but the truth is that you have to do your homework, as we have done recently. We have to prepare ourselves, and we have to do what is necessary. So as I said yesterday, we were there in Tobago, we met with the council, listened to the challenges. We completed the screening exercise for the 15 candidates, were completed in July of this year. The prospective candidates have already been in the field. The PNM have been already having meetings, going out into the community. So in other words, we are preparing ourselves, we are doing what is necessary, and we are very optimistic.
Good afternoon, Belandishon from Imuse. I'm going to follow up on what Akash would have asked. Is the opposition concerned with regards to the optics of, Prime Minister Gonzalez's daughter getting the house, given that it's so close to the election, and so many people would have been, in the line for a house and waiting?
Okay, well, maybe you didn't hear what I said. You are saying so many people in line for a house. There are existing houses available now. In other words, if you wanted to purchase a house at Victoria Keys, you can purchase a house.
Yes. But no, what I was asking about was the rent-to-own
Yes.
facility. I know that, some people may not have been able to get the 1.3 million, but, a rent-to-own makes it a bit easier for people to at least get access to a property.
Well, not those properties that is on the open market. No, that's not the case.
And my other question is regards to should citizens be concerned that their private information could now be leaked if they speak out against the government?
Yeah.
If their private information could be released if they speak out against the government?
Well, it's 2 things. I mean, you have the Data Protection Act, and you also have the Integrity in Public Life Act. So I made the point that as a minister who's a minister in the Ministry of Housing and decides to take that position and to proudly display and not to be concerned at all about the possibility of an infraction, of course, indicates just pure recklessness.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Opposition Leader Urvashi from TV6. Could you, if possible, could you explain or tell us whether or not the properties, the apartments at Victoria Keys are still vested in HDC? Because some of the documents we saw did have the HDC stamp and so on with the individuals' names on it. And if so, the agreement, while on the open market, is still between the applicant, the buyer, the purchaser, and HDC. And given that is on open market, does that mean that the requirements now or prerequisites are null and void? Does that preclude the applicant from those HDC prerequisites?
Okay, well, I must confess I'm a little confused.
Okay, so first, are the properties still vested within HDC?
Well, yes.
Victoria Keys.
Yes.
So the agreement is between still the applicant and HDC.
Well, yes, as far as I know.
And because it's on open market, whereas the agreement is still between the applicant and HDC, those HDC prerequisites are null and void?
Well, you mean in terms of if you are, what you're talking about?
A citizen, income, resident income.
Well, listen, as far as I know, if I go back to what I said earlier, when it was initially conceived in 2002, you would have had some criteria. So if you put it on the open market, obviously it means that the criteria will change. Because an open market means that if anyone wants to purchase, I'm sure, yes, you'll have a criteria. But you call your real estate agent and you are dealing with the real estate agent who is acting on behalf of the HDC.
Okay.
In terms of, because I was thinking of that, the specific requirement I see, Arnold Roberts refers specifically to whether or not some of the people have other properties, and the fact that under the HDC, you are not supposed to own any other property in order to qualify. So I was wondering if the fact that it's on the open market, whether that removes that requirement, or whether, you could buy it, yes, but you're still not supposed to have other property in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, as far as I know, because it was on the open market, the criteria would not have existed as it relates to purchase of other properties.
This open market
And-
mean now that
and
there's
it was
no
subsidy. There's no subsidy.
and this open market now mean that regardless that the relationship is still with HDC, there's no prerequisite, or are you saying that prerequisites may have changed?
I'll ask Faris, who was a member of the board as well at that time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Very interesting questions, all relating to law. Just let me quickly remind you, when Dr. Munilal was the Minister of Housing, they removed the cap criterion. Perhaps you've forgotten. There was a cap for qualification for HTC. So in 2002, it was meant for middle and low income. In 2002, it stayed that way until 2010. In 2010, the UNC came in, they removed the cap. They spent millions of dollars per apartment. A single bedroom apartment came to several $1 million of cost price. After that happened, they moved the cap for qualification. The UNC removed the cap. Following that cap, with the millions spent in uplifting, building a pool, doing things that no longer fell into low income. By the UNC action, therefore, they removed the caps. It then came to open market. The PNM cabinet obtained valuations from open market rental positions. They put it onto the market. It has been on the market for open sale. No limitations in respect of first-time ownership, etc. It was put out for a very long period. There were very few persons coming to buy. So it's been on the open market via retail, via normal real estate investments, etc. This is nothing surprising. Perhaps we've forgotten this. We've been through this umpteen times. I'm just merely connecting the dots for you today. So to answer your questions, any person could have bought those apartments. Anybody. Dr. Ralph Gonsalves and all. These were not in the HTC low income, middle income pool at all, and has been that way since the UNC was there, unless you've forgotten. So this is nothing to, it is shocking and staggering that the Minister of Housing, Minister in the Ministry of Housing, the junior minister, could roll out and attack not only a prime minister and his Trinidadian family, because Eloise Gonsalves is Trinidadian. Their children live here, as far as I know. Storm Gonsalves and Soleil Gonsalves live here. This is on the open market at arm's length transactions. And relative to the inquiry as to on the 30th, this transaction was closed. Whether a government changes or not on any date, there's a continuity of business. There would have been transactions before, agreement for sale, deposit, structures, etc. Now, what Minister Roberts did is quite shocking. He is a minister of government with sensitive personal information. Go to the Data Protection Act. Sensitive personal information, including financial information, is sensitive under law. You're not allowed to disclose that information. It's why when you go to a bank or a financial institution processing, your information is kept in confidence. The Integrity in Public Life Act also has obligations like that. Mr. Roberts is a man quite accustomed to dealing, it seems, with issues of the law and law enforcement. And what really should be the focus here is, are you comfortable that your personal information could be on a platform, worse yet, on some program called Polorian something or whatever he's called himself? When you look at this thing and you see media houses reporting Polorian juice or whatever his program is called, you have to ask yourself, are you confident that you're in the right hands with a government minister leaking, weaponizing sensitive personal information, in this case, concerning a prime minister of a regional leader, a long-time prime minister of long pants standard, Ralph Gonsalves, a friend to Trinidad and Tobago for decades. Are you satisfied with that? And where is the condemnation in respect of that? Today, Ralph Gonzalez and his family. Tomorrow, Urvashi Tiwari and her family. Are you good with that? That should be condemned openly. So I hope I've lent some clarification.
Mr. Rowley, and just to be clear, if I were to purchase a Victoria Keys apartment, I don't have to file any documents with HDC. I could go through a real estate agent and so
The real estate agent connects the purchase price with the vendor. The vendor is HDC. The property is vested in the HDC.
No, so do I have to apply to them like how regular people have to have a number and apply?
No, there's no HAFS number. There's no applicant number. If you go, you will see there's an open house, for instance. Contact an AMCL representative starting from 1 million. Dr. Rudal Munilal, Minister of Housing, re-engineered the HTC middle income, low income, where you would qualify. The UNC government 2010 to 2015 took Victoria Keys off the HTC shelf. That raised the price. It therefore could not be reasonable for a government to say, listen, we'll take HTC applicants who qualify for $300,000, $500,000, $800,000 mortgage and sell a $2 million apartment. It means the taxpayer would have to subsidize that by $1.5 million. Our government was therefore compelled to put it on the open market because the taxpayers cannot be brought to the position of subsidizing $1.5 million because of the design of the UNC. So it would have been irresponsible for our cabinet. So our cabinet took the step, I recall vividly, of getting valuations from valuators, of wrestling with how to make sure the taxpayer didn't pay for rich people owning apartments at the cost of taxpayers. It's why Dr. Rowley, as Prime Minister, reduced the income level under $25,000. They had people with Mercedes-Benz in the garage on the HTC list because they qualified. We changed all of that. I'm just reminding you of what we discussed in the last 10 years.
And finally, the rent agreement, is that normal with HEC? Can anyone rent to own?
I can't speak to that because I'm not familiar with the particulars, but I do recall, perhaps Minister Imbert remembers better than me, that a small portion may have been allocated where the margins for the properties weren't being heavily subsidized. So I can't recall the details of that. I'd have to take a look at it and get back to you. Yeah.
This is a,
For me or for someone else?
well, you could answer. A man of Ralph Gonzalez stature, his wife and children are applying for, seeking homes,
Buying homes.
buying
At
homes.
market value
Right.
through a real estate agent. Let's be accurate.
Right. Okay.
They ain't getting nothing free here.
Yeah. That was never implied in the
I just put
question.
it for the rest of the listening audience.
Okay. It is that the Minister of Housing, at least, is it likely that he would have known that these purchases were being made?
I couldn't say. Ministers receive reports all the time because, listen, in the disposition, in the sale of Victoria Keys, you're looking to generate income. HTC built it. The government built it. You don't want the income to watch it in the bank, You want it to go and pay for housing. Contractors are owed money. I am told, I am actively aware as an attorney in practice, there are people who have not been paid since April and before. Massive outstanding projects. I heard the most ludicrous thing coming out of Tobago today to say they have aggregate on the ground, which means that they're overproducing. No, sir, you're underselling. The Trinidadian demand for aggregate has been very slow because the country has shut down. Grass can't cut, bills can't pay, potholes all over the place. The beautiful thing is that now when there's flooding, nobody complains because the complainers are in government. Now when things can't get done, nobody complains. It's as if, whoosh, everything got fixed. What's happening is that my former constituents tell me They are mortified, afraid of the SOE, that they will be targeted if they step up and complain. And the country is therefore simmering. The Fed promoters are bawling. The carnival bands that launched with their tickets in pre-sale that had drinks included, the drinks doubled in price. You don't stop a fete today. I live right in a vicinity of where fetes are held all the time. The noise is incredible. Brian Lara, that has complaints, is miles away, albeit on a flat plane, where the complaints. But I'll tell you this, folks, in a country where you have to earn income, understanding that there's a little inconvenience around the major economic event of Carnival is part and parcel. It can be addressed by noise management, by the EMA intervention. As Minister of Rural Development and Local Government in my time, we rearranged speakers, we had monitors, the feds ended promptly at a certain hour. There are mitigation levels. But for the man and woman of Trinidad and Tobago that wants to participate in Carnival, for those who are looking to make money for the first time in the year, Carnival is a big event. So the cancellation is an exceedingly difficult one. I fear that I'm intruding upon time.
Yes, I do have a question. Paula Linda from the Newsday. Hi. So this one could be either the opposition leader or Dr. Brown. In terms of Carnival, you all have already spoken about the economy. But in terms of the global issues that are going on, is there a worry that people will not want to come to Carnival, both because of what is going on in our waters, as well as the US president not possibly letting people back into the country?
My colleague, Senator Brown, and I guess you all could just check it on the HDC 29 minutes ago. Trinidad and Tobago Housing Development Corporation Asset Management Company will be having another open house at Victoria Keys, Saturday the 22nd, 2025, 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. So, right, so Ovishi, you can check it out. Yeah, good. All right, so, I mean, you know, the truth is that, no, it is linked. No, I mean, that is what, yeah, very linked. It just came up 29 minutes ago. Yes. Yeah. Yes, yes. Well, maybe. It's quite possible. Yeah, but the truth is that we know that Carnival is an event that attracts people from the diaspora and people from all over the world. I mean, it has been labeled, I mean, one of the, you know, greatest events, one of the greatest show on earth. So we know that it is an activity that people look forward to. But at the same time, everyone is paying attention to what is going on in Trinidad and Tobago. Senator Brown mentioned the fact that you have the largest vessel, the SS Ford, that is now in Caribbean waters. So, I mean, clearly you've been hearing, you know, rumors of war. You have been, you know, we know as a fact that several boats have been destroyed. People have been killed. So, yes, I would think people would be concerned. And I definitely am concerned about it. And I think as members of the public, as the leader of the opposition, as the People's National Movement, yes, definitely there must be cause for concern.
Has stopped sharing intelligence with the US because of what has been deemed a violation
Dr. Brown?
in the international waters.
Well, I think the important message here is that there is growing sentiment in the international community, documented, that these kinetic strikes do not square with international law. That's a very diplomatic way of saying it. I could choose to say it the way the United Nations has said it. We are a paying member of the UN. If you look at the last budget documents, it's in the tens of millions of dollars that our taxpayers pay for our membership and support of UN agencies. On the 31st of August 2025, and I think this is bigger than a rent-to-own discussion, where the United Nations gave an official declaration via the High Commissioner for Human Rights that the kinetic strikes on alleged drug boats celebrated and endorsed by our Prime Minister violate international law and amount to extrajudicial killings. That was in October. On November 10th, 2025, the Foreign Minister of France, France is an EU member state and a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, said in plain language, the US military operations in the Caribbean, this is not us, this is not the PNM, he's not a member of the People's National Movement, violate international law. And you have other individuals, we saw that reference via CNN to the British also taking certain actions that we'd have to verify and validate. I saw the Prime Minister indicating that CNN was reporting fake news, but there's a perception. Once someone offers a criticism, it's either fake news or you need to attack them. I think the Ralph Gonsalves example is classic, where he's giving good advice based on sound principle as the most senior head of government within CARICOM, and he's attacked and denigrated and has people talking foolishness in the regional space. So it's now not controversial. It's not a matter for individual opinion or political opinion. It's black and white. What is happening, celebrated by Trinidad and Tobago under this government, is illegal and a violation of the UN Charter and international law. I don't know how else to put it.
Let's take it to the opposition leader.
So we are very close to wrapping
Yeah,
up.
just-
Akash, yours will be the last question. And I hope it's a question.
Yeah. So yesterday, in defending Minister Roberts' approach to bringing the information to light, the Prime Minister would have said that he brought a legitimate concern forward. You all have expressed concerns about how that information came about, citing that it could be a violation of the Integrity in Public Life Act. You mentioned, I think it was Data Communication Act.
Data Protection.
Data Protection Act. And I would have asked the opposition leader just now if any thoughts about referring him to the Integrity Commission, and she said that you'll have to discuss. My question is, what is there to discuss if you're so confident that he did?
Well, we said that the issues of the breach of laws have arisen. Any lawyer that were to speak at the podium immediately and say that we're doing X or Y would be irresponsible. We must flag it. So the broader concerns, for instance, there's breach of oath of secrecy, the other dynamics, the law of confidence applies. So it's not just a one-dimensional aspect of the law. And to do that, you've got to make sure that you've got the facts. Our obligation is to raise issues. In raising the issues, and certainly as an attorney myself, I like to concern myself with the law. I want to go back and find Polori and Moby and see what it is was actually said, and on Polori and Juice, and see what was said and get there. I'm trivializing the character because I think that the issue is larger than the character. So it is incumbent upon us to get the facts and that we take responsible steps. Let me make it clear. We are adamant that the war against crime must continue. The war against drugs must continue. The war against criminal activity must continue. But we have an obligation under the Constitution to act with responsibility. So what Senator Brown was referring to is that delicate balance between taking the things that matter and finding the balance on how you make it operate. It is not a black and white situation. It is something that has to be balanced. Okay.
Thank you very much, Faris. The last question of today goes to Paula Lindo.
Right. I did want to ask Minister Imbert about you made a post on X a couple days ago talking about the falling share price. And I wanted to know if you would like to elaborate some more on that. Yes, please.
FCB was offered to the public in an initial public offering under the UNC government. Minister Hawaii was the Minister of Finance at the time. And thousands of citizens bought shares in FCB. There was subsequently another public offering for FCB shares, and again, thousands of persons bought FCB shares. In the budget speech of the current Minister of Finance, he spoke to another tranche or another phase of the National Investment Fund of NIF, which would be backed by FCB shares, a big block of FCB shares. It is therefore of concern to everyone, all the little people who invested in FCB when it was first done in 2014 or some year like that. Minister Hawaii was the Minister of Finance at the time, so it has to be around there. And people who bought FCB shares subsequently. And now that the government is saying they want to generate, I think it's about $1 billion in revenue from the sale of a block of FCB shares, that the share price has dropped by 26%. Dropped by 26% since the general election. And I have had a concern with bank shares in particular. And I don't think our stock market is sufficiently sophisticated to deal with somebody who sells 100 shares, because that's what's going on. If you care to do the research, you're going to see some of these huge drops in the price of bank shares. It started with Republic Bank, but now it has gone to FCB over the last 6 months or so. It's 100 shares, 200 shares, dropping the price by $3, $4, $5. That doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, you know. So it is something I think the authorities need to look at.
Is there a problem with the chairman who also chaired the FCB say that they are committed to helping the vigilance of this
Well, I don't have the details on I don't have the details on what Mr. Bidesi said. Is him you're talking about, right? I don't know what he said. I've seen commentary on this, that there was some link between the revitalization blueprint and financing of all of it or some of it by FCB. I am not familiar with any of that. I am talking about the effect on the public. I'm talking about the effect on the shareholders. I'm talking about government revenue in terms of another National Investment Fund offering. It has to be frightening for a pensioner, an elderly person who put their money into FCB to see the share price just plummet like that. You've got to be frightened, because let's say you had $200,000, your gratuity or whatever it is in FCB shares. You've just lost $50,000 over the last 6 months in value. It's got to be frightening. It is a very, very serious matter. Okay, that's all I'd like to say about that.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to members of media, to my colleagues, and to those of you joining us on social media. We will be back next week, God willing, for another press conference. Until then, reach home safe, be safe.
They will take